Hello, everyone. I think we're live, which is great. Hello. Hope to see you all in the chat as we settle in and wait for more people to join us. Whatever questions you have about the MCAT, about registration, about resources, about studying, today is the day to answer them. So any questions at all that have been plaguing you, worrying you, throw them into the chat right now. I'm going to just kind of open it for questions as we settle in. And then as we keep going, if there's certain things that I want to cover, I definitely want to cover some resources and registration tips, but I also want to answer all of your questions. So definitely pop into the chat if you have questions, but you're not sure like how to frame it. Just tell me like, hey, I want to learn more about resources. Hey, I want to, know your registration tips, things like that. Hello, guys. Hello. Great to see you in the chat. So yeah, hit me with your questions. What were you worried about? Or what do you want my take on? We're going to get very much into like Amanda's opinion today, as opposed to like, empirical evidence. So definitely feel free to take it with a grain of salt, but I'm happy to share my personal experiences and anecdotes with anything MCAT related today. Hello, guys. Good to see you. Happy October. We made it, right? It's fall. Fall's my favorite season. I love sweaters, so happy to be here. Awesome. Hello, guys. All right. Any questions? Any questions that are plaguing us before we get started? Give you guys a second to pop them in the chat just so I can keep in mind what we want to talk about today. We are going to go through, for those that are just joining, we're going to go through some resources, some new stuff that's come out, registration tips, timeline tips, how to build a study schedule tips, all those things. Hello. Yep. Tips for retakers. Absolutely. Got lots of those. I think the majority of students I work with are retakers. So definitely have lots of tips for that. Any other questions before we dive in? I want to give everyone a chance to come in and get settled. I know we have a lot of people kind of logging in. Did anyone see that the Amazon Web Systems went down this morning? I don't know if you saw it or if it impacted you, but it did impact the AAMC. Their registration portal is closed right now. And so it may take people a little bit to log on. So I want to give people a moment. But yeah, that whole system went down. Apparently when that system goes down, the internet kind of goes down a little bit in the morning. So hope it didn't affect you guys too much. Awesome. And by the way, when I look down, I'm looking at the chat. It's over on my other screen. Math on the MCAT? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Calculation number of questions. That's a really good question. It's actually, it's an important thing because it helps you decide like, do I genuinely have the time to get the work done that I know I want to get done? So yes, absolutely. We'll talk about both calculating based on time and calculating based on number of questions, whichever makes more sense for where you're at in your prep. So sometimes it's putting in the hours and sometimes it's putting in the question numbers. And it's good to kind of have both tools. Yeah, absolutely. Hey guys, for Joe's just joining us, I'm just having you guys put in any questions. This is an Ask Me Anything session. We're going to talk about some things that I have prepared too, but it's an Ask Me Anything. So anything that's on your mind about MCAT, anything that you're worried about, no question is too small or too big at this session. So pop in the chat. How many of you, maybe in the chat as well, how many of you are planning on registering this week as well? If you're planning on registering, or like you're definitely committed to getting a test date, I just want to talk about a couple things as well. So if you are planning on registering, want to know, okay? Awesome. Yeah, hey Jade, it's excited to have you there. Amazing, round 2. All right, so a lot of us are retakers in here, which is great. We'll talk a lot about that. Great. Okay, so as you guys are putting in your questions, there's something to just be aware of because of course something has to happen on the week of registration because the Amazon Web Services went down. The AAMC, at least as far as I last checked, did say that they had closed the registration portal. They still said that they plan on doing registration starting tomorrow at noon Eastern. So I'm assuming that they're getting this back on track. But if you tried to log in today and couldn't, that was why. And I will be keeping an eye on that as well. And if there are any announcements, I'll send out an email. I would just check the AAMC website a lot too. But hopefully everything will get resolved before registration actually starts, because we don't want anything to gum up the system. Yeah, and registration, again, yeah, it's depending on where you live. So my western side of the country, you guys have a little bit more buffer time. My East Coasters, it may just be delayed. Honestly, it may just take a lot longer to get off the wait list if everything is a little slower in the web services system. So I would just like tell your boss, tell your professor, whoever you're with, if you are logging in, that you need that time, you need your computer to be up, because that's the reality we're living in this week. Oh, great question about accommodations. Short answer, yes, it's always worth applying for. For those that are interested in accommodations or have questions about it, the AAMC does go through a good detail on their website. I basically say that if you think that may be impacting your score, it is always worth getting accommodations. Medical schools will not see that you took the MCAT with accommodations. It only helps. And if they're not going to give it to you if you don't need it, right? So if you think you may qualify, they usually require, for ADHD, they require a neuropsych eval, a recent one. So that is expensive. Now they've actually developed, I think they have like a little bit of scholarship money for those that need a neuropsych eval, but they are expensive. It's on their website as well. And it takes up to 2 months to get your accommodations. And then you have to like basically do a whole separate registration system if you have extra time. Like you'll have to call Pearson VUE and then they'll get you set up. So I always say, like, if you're getting accommodations for school, or you notice that like this is definitely impacting your ability to do well on the exam, it is always worth applying for. The worst thing they can do is say no, right? So it's worth it. And again, they'll give it to you if you need it. So yeah, good questions, guys. Again, more questions in the chat for those that are just joining. Lots of questions in the chat would be great. Cars, yeah. Yeah, I have some cars thoughts. I just took the new exam. Just so you guys know, there's a new exam. We're going to talk about it. And it's been a minute since I've done a full cars section. So I was like, oh yeah, this is a lot of effort. So I'm excited to share with you guys some thoughts about the new exam, because largely good, in my opinion. What I saw from that exam, in the sense that it's as I roughly expected. There was nothing too crazy on it. And a lot of students tell me when we do have a new exam that the next set of exams in real life, like we can't ever predict exactly what's going to be on it, but they do say it feels representative to the most recently released exam. So I'm excited we have that resource. We'll talk about it. Cars is so fun though, right? I mean, it's just weird passages all the time. I feel like I learn the most in the cars section by teaching it. Like I know so much random stuff now. I'm like great at trivia because I've learned so many things through cars passages. So, you know, there's a silver lining there. Oh, interesting. Yeah, Khan Academy. I have thoughts on all those resources, and I'll kind of get into those. So yeah, I'll talk about Khan Academy passages, and just like some third-party resources as well that I think are good versus grain of salt, maybe. And again, just because they're hard doesn't mean they're bad, but again, grain of salt in terms of what do you need to work on compared to like your full-length practice exams. So that's always something that's good to take a look at. So we'll definitely talk about that. It is nice, of course, that Khan Academy is a free resource and it is sponsored by the AAMC, like financially. So my expectation is that it stays updated. I haven't seen too many updates, but at least they're like managing it through the AAMC. All right, any other questions, guys, before we dive into the questions we already have? For those that are just joining, any questions at all MCAT related, throw them in the chat. Great, we got lots of them. Physics stuff, yeah, we can talk about that. Yeah, in terms of testing, we'll talk a little bit about it, but basically it's when you think you'll be like over 80% ready, which we'll talk about in terms of, that was a good question in terms of how many questions per week. We'll talk about like a certain amount of questions per week. I like students to have done a certain amount of practice exams and a certain amount of hours in. If that can get done by January, great. If you're like, I think I might need more time, I also have some holiday stuff, my family's coming into town, then it may be worth it to push a little till February, because then you'll just give yourself some extra buffer time. Most students find that like an extra few weeks usually helps if it's their first time as a test taker, just because we never know what's going to come up. Maybe you'll get sick, maybe something will happen, and it's nice to have a little buffer. For my retakers, you guys know a little bit more about what's expected and your rhythm and how much you expect to improve. So it tends to be a little easier to make those plans. But yeah, anywhere January, February, March, honestly, April, all those are good for applying for the 2026 cycle. Great questions. I'm loving some of these. I already have these prepped. Yeah, non-traditional students. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about some non-traditionals. I was a non-traditional. I think non-traditional is like the new traditional, to be honest, nowadays. But yeah. And yeah, short answer, memorizing any full pre-made deck is overkill. And I know that's a strong statement. I know that Reddit would disagree with me. But short answer, I think that hard rote memorization of a pre-made deck that you did not make is a lot of mental effort that may not translate into points. And we'll talk a little bit about that when I get into flashcards. But I'm always hesitant to just be like, yes, you should memorize all of this, because honestly, you may not need to. And it's a lot of mental effort to memorize stuff that's not going to help you get points, right? Your biggest limitations are time, capacity, right? Time and capacity. And the capacity piece is what we want to be careful about with flashcards. Yeah, no, I don't mean like never use Anki. I have some opinions, but I don't like people just rote doing a pre-made deck on a pre-made schedule that's not theirs. You're different than the person who made that deck, and you have different strengths and weaknesses. And should you be spending a ton of time on something they considered hard for them? I don't know, right? It's something that I personally think, in an effort to make things easy, people just want to just download decks and do it. Easy is at sacrifice of efficiency, right? So we want to be careful with that. Yeah. So Chem Phys, cars. Yeah, here's my deal. And this is gonna, again, I am just the opposing side, because not to age myself, but I was in school before Anki existed, or at least before it was big. And so I didn't use it because we didn't have it. And I had tried so hard to be a flashcard person and write a bunch of flashcards. And every time I did, I would make a whole deck and never touch it again, because it took so much effort just to make the deck. So if flashcards don't work for you, don't force it, right? It's not the magic ticket to a good score. It's really useful if you find flashcards useful and you use it the right way. But it's not like the golden ticket to a good MCAT score, despite what Reddit might make you think. Oh, thanks, guys. All right, guys, let's dive into some of your questions. I think these are all really good. I'm answering them as we go, but let's get started. Continue to ask as we go. So step one, I wanted to talk about the new resources, and then we'll talk a little bit about registration and about study skills. So resource questions are now a great thing to do. Number one, AAMC Resources. So I'm at the stage where I've gone back and forth with AAMC Resources. I really do think that they're required. Like, I really think you got to go through those AAMC Resources. You should get the online only bundle. I'm now requiring it for my courses. I used to not, and now I'm requiring it as an add-on for the courses, because I really do think that they make a difference. There's certain things about using them that I find super useful. Do I think you need to do every single question? No. If you are already really good at bio, if you are getting your goal score in biochem, you don't need to go through volume 2 of the bio deck. I do not think that's worth your time. But if you struggle with physics, I have students go through that physics deck 5 times, 6 times until they really learn how to do it. So I definitely encourage you to do that. I think the CARS work in there, that we have such limited good quality CARS resources out there, that I really think going through all the CARS passages, again, unless CARS is like a super strength for you, is really worth your time. And then the volume 1 and volume 2 of the section bank, I think is really important, not because I think that they're representative. All right, those are hard passages. Those section banks are like super, super challenging. They're like one after another of like highest difficulty, but I think it's like resistance training, right? When I used to be an athlete, they would put weight vests on us, right? When we did squats or we did runs so that when they took those weight vests off, we would feel like it was easier. I consider the section banks to be your resistance training for the MCAT so that the MCAT itself feels easier. All right, so that's why I really like the volume packs, not because I'm like, oh, you definitely need to memorize all this content, but because it forces you to think about, what if I see something I've never seen before? What if I see a really hard passage? How do I navigate that and still get as many points as I can, right? Just like a real test. Cool? Yeah, definitely go through questions again. This is another thing that I've changed my tune on. I've actually seen that students' scores improve when they do questions that were hard for them again, because it forces you to think about what you did wrong before and how you're changing it to doing it right this time. So take some time in between, obviously, so you don't remember that question 37 is C, but I actually think it's really valuable after about a month to go through that deck again, if it gave you a lot of difficulty, the Q bank, right? So definitely feel free to do that. For my retakers, it is totally fine to retake exams and redo practice sets as long as it's been about 3 months for exams and about 2 months for practice sets, is what I've seen is kind of like the time frame where we start to really forget the test. And even if you loosely remember, like, oh yeah, I kind of remember this topic, you still need to do the thought process to get the question right. So I haven't seen any major issues in terms of scores with retaking exams. Okay, awesome. Yeah, oh, representative besides AAMC is a tough question because I've actually not ever gotten a good correlation. And I've used all the other test prep companies, or my students have over the years, and I've never really seen a super strong correlation between any. Blueprint was the closest for a while, but since last year, it's been a little off, like just higher or lower. A lot of students find the car section in Blueprint to be the least aligned, whereas the science sections are on like the harder end, but still within range of AAMC. Yeah, it's tough to say because they all have their pros and cons in terms of what's representative. What I will tell you is that I use Blueprint, and now I've started to use Altius as a secondary recommendation, not because I think they're the necessarily more representative than any others. There's pros and cons to all the test prep companies other than AAMC, but Blueprint and Altius now both code their questions in the exact same way that AAMC does, with like 1A, 2A, 4A, that kind of thing. So it makes it a lot easier to compare your individual subsection scores because you actually have the same data. So that's why I like Blueprint and Altius if you're going to pick another test prep company, just because they allow a little bit more like question to question matchup than the other test prep companies who just break it down by subject. Yeah, Altius, like cars, I think is the hardest for people to redesign. Jack Weston was the cars guy when he first came on the scene, like in 2016, right when the car section first started. Since then, Jack Weston has moved out into the sciences and has a lot of great free resources, but I have found a lot of errors in the science sections on his materials and some typos and some issues. However, their car stuff is good, like largely, again, some issues here or there, but like largely good. Largely kind of on the theme of what I see for AAMC. So it's also free, which is really nice. So the free section tests for those that need to work extra on cars are really good for Jack Weston, I would say, and you don't have to pay extra money. Again, always grain of salt a little bit compared to AAMC, but and definitely more hefty, like a handful of salt if you're using the science passages through Jack Weston. But in general, I find the cars sections to be pretty decent. Yeah. Great. Awesome. In terms of resources, I have some others, which is great. In terms of resources, other than AAMC Resources, I will tell you, and good question, Jade, I'm going to just include this right in. UWorld, I know, this is where I do agree with Reddit. UWorld is it. Like, not because it's like massively more representative than any others, but it has the best combination of topics and the best combination and the best explanations. Like it's got a good combination of visual and text. It's really robust. It goes through every wrong answer. So to learn from, I find UWorld to be the best of the QBanks I've ever used. I know there's a lot coming out right now, guys. I will let you know. I've gone to conferences about this. They're almost all AI made, which again, I don't dislike AI, but I do get nervous because I have tried to use AI a lot for the MCAT and it gets content stuff wrong all the time. So I don't think it knows science as well as we wish it did. And I think it's learning, but it's not there yet. And I don't think it's good enough to make practice questions about this very hard exam that's critical reasoning. So I would be cautious about using any QBank that looks like it might be made by AI, just because I don't think it's robust enough yet, personally. This is now Amanda opinion. And I do trust UWorld because they originally built their questions for USMLE and step tests and licensing exams, and then moved into MCAT and have a very, very rigorous process of vetting questions. So I trust their subject matter experts, and I feel like they do a good job with vetting questions. They don't just slap a bunch of stuff on there. I know it's expensive. Their customer service, I have issues with too, but it's the best we got. So I think AAMC and UWorld are the two purchased resources that I recommend. And again, for the course, it's 6 months. So I like to have students activate 6 months before their expected test day. And if you're not sure which test day you're choosing, 6 months before your later test day, or at the start of the course, whichever comes sooner. Yeah, great questions here, guys. Keep going, keep giving me questions. Yeah, the Blueprint QBank, I don't mind. The last couple times I've used it, I haven't used it super recently. Last couple times I used it, I found it like lacking in some areas and like overemphasizing some others, but I feel that way about most QPACs, where I'm like, wow, you're spending a lot of time testing me on this one very narrow topic and not testing me on this very important topic. So I had some issues with like their division of topics, especially their passage-based work I felt was lacking. But that may have changed. Last time I checked, I think was like a year and a half ago. I've just moved to UWorld because I trust their resources the most. Yeah. Great questions, guys. Keep going in. Other thing I would recommend for resources is, of course, if you like books, books are great. I have a couple thoughts on books from the recently released books that have come out. My OG is Kaplan. Out of all the resources that Kaplan provides, I think they did the best job with their books. They're efficient. They're not too big, right? They're like normal size instead of like chunky like the Princeton Review ones. They get to the point. They have pretty good organization. Like I like their content summaries at the end. And I just feel like they're a little bit more like layman's terms and less like somebody who has a PhD in physics read it, which I appreciate about those books. You do not need the newest version. You can buy them for like $20 on Facebook Marketplace from someone who's desperate to never think about the MCAT again. So that is my recommendation for like textbooks. If you like to have textbooks and you want like kind of a cheap option. The U books, which is from UWorld, students really like them that are using them. They are very pretty. They're expensive. So do I think you need them? Not at all. If you're a super visual learner, price point's not an issue, and you like the interface of UWorld anyway, sure. I don't think it's required purchase. It's a lot of money for a set of books. And then on the other side of the coin, Jack Weston did just release free set of books, and I was so excited because I've really been desperate for a free set of online books. I found a whole bunch of errors when I went through them. That was a few months ago. It's definitely, they're working on updating those errors, but I don't recommend them yet until those updates, like they've had several years of updates, because I just found a lot of small but significant misunderstandings of the content, which made me, again, pretty nervous. Yeah. Blueprint books, I haven't used as much. I feel like they're pretty good. If you have them, use them, right? So like, here's my rule. If you have resources, there's no reason not to use those resources. Just if you're purchasing resources for the first time or exploring them, those are my recs. But again, if you like the resources you have and they're good and they're working for you, use them, right? Don't reinvent the wheel. Great questions, guys. All right. I'm going to dive into, looks like we're pretty good on resource questions right now. Khan Academy. So Khan Academy one of the interesting things is Khan Academy is hired by AAMC. They have a fund to maintain their MCAT course, right? Which is videos, quizzes, and some AAMC style practice questions and passages. I believe Jack Weston still has the plugin that transforms them into like AAMC style looking passages instead of just like Khan Academy where you have to get the question right every time. They're good, and they're a really good free resource. I think students get overwhelmed with all the videos. And I do have to say, one of the issues I had with it back when I was like using that as my main study resource for students was that it was very clear that they had pulled videos from other Khan Academy courses. And the reason I know that is because there's a few videos in the sciences that specifically use a calculator to answer the question. And as we all know, there's no calculator on the MCAT. So that like bothered me a little bit because I'm like, if this is an MCAT specific program, we shouldn't be using a calculator in the practice questions, right? Like we should be rounding and doing that. So I have some minor issues with it. However, it is a great free resource. Definitely use it as a supplement to the other practice questions and practice problems. And if you like Khan Academy and like that interface, definitely use it. I find it a little hard because I like to see the person that's talking to me. But I will still reference Khan Academy videos in my resources when I have like a specific topic that they teach really well. So yeah, so I think, Psych Soc is good for, I think out of all the subject areas, Khan Academy does the best job with Psych Soc. I think they have very entertaining videos, good kind of like mnemonics and visualizations in there. So I think out of all the subject areas, I like Khan Academy the best for Psych Soc. And there's not a lot of like YouTubers who do Psych Soc stuff, myself included, to be honest. So it's a great resource for that section. Yeah. Yep, I like the 300-page for Psych Soc. It's a little dated now, I believe. I think they said they updated it, but I don't know if they actually did. The issue I have with it is, again, same thing, the overwhelming component to it. So I use the 300-page document as a reference, like a Control F reference. So if I'm teaching Gestalt principles and I want to show a visual, I'll like Control F into that document, Gestalt principles, and like show the visual. So it's a nice reference. I wouldn't necessarily like use it cover to cover, especially if you get overwhelmed by a lot of text, right? Because it is a lot and it can feel very draining to do. I like to use it as like, oh, I never saw this word before in this practice question. Let me go look that up. Cool. It's going to be okay. My freshman, you got this. The fact that you're here means that your life's going to be a lot easier. Don't you worry. You got a long time ahead. All right, guys, you have a lot of questions, so I'm going to go ahead and just take a moment, keep putting them in, and feel free to put them back in if like I lost it in the shuffle here. But I do want to just mention, before we get into study planning, I think I'm answering all of the questions about resources. Again, a general question about registering that I keep seeing. Do I take it this time or this time? My general recommendation is pick the later date of whatever you're deciding between. Because two reasons. Number one, most students who choose the earlier date, I have found, move their date. So if you have a range of dates that you're choosing between, choose the latest one. The cool thing about that is due to the rescheduling fees, if you are on track and you're starting to see your goal score earlier and you're like, actually, I want to move it up so I don't get burnt out, it will cost you less to move it up closer to where you are in time than to push it back. So it gives you a little bit more wiggle room and is less expensive, and gives you kind of like, okay, I am committed to taking it at this last date at the latest, right? The hard part I think with students is that they'll push it from like February to March and then March to April because they've already gotten the habit of pushing it. I kind of want you to say, this is the last date I'm willing to take this exam. I am committing to that and I'm going to make the plan accordingly, but actual like schedule wise, plan your study schedule around taking it on the earlier date. So if you're thinking March 20th versus March 8th, schedule March 20th, study plan for March 8th. And that gives you a 2-week buffer, right? So that's what I like to do if you're deciding between two dates or deciding between 1 month or another month. The caveat there is if you have like a ton of life stuff happening, you don't want to take your practice or your real exam during that time. So also think about like, do I have finals? Do I have travel? Do I have work that's going to be really crazy? Do I have family visiting? All that stuff. Try to pick a date that you have as little going on as possible. That's the other piece. Cool. All right, guys, let's keep going. So I will tell you, here's what I did with Psych Soc, and here's what I kind of recommend. I like students going through all the Psych Soc questions in UWorld and starting there, because a lot of psych and sociology we actually do have knowledge on, like just from being a human and living in this world. There's a lot of psych and soc just existing, and I don't want you to study stuff you already know. So what I have students do is I have them roll through practice questions in the Psych Soc section of UWorld, and write down any words they don't know, and that's what they're going to study the content on. Not just what you got wrong, but also like, whoa, I never saw this word before. I never saw this word before. And then use the 300-page Khan Academy document as a reference. Students sometimes really like to download those Jack Sparrow, Miles Down decks. That's fine. Go through all the cards and sort out the ones you already know. Redesign the ones that you need to work on and subdivide them into small decks. And that can kind of cross-reference your material as well. So it's less of like a going through chapter by chapter in the book and more about like, what do I already know and what do I not need to work on? Remember, efficiency is the key. We do not want you spending time learning something you already know. I know it feels good, but going through chapter 1 of psychology, when you already know a lot of chapter 1 of psychology, is not a good use of your time, right? So figure out what you don't know through a bunch of practice questions and then learn. This is not something I recommend for all sciences. This is specific to Psych Soc, because Psych Soc, we already have like a base knowledge because it's the study of humans and we are humans. Obviously, if you've never learned organic chemistry, I don't want you just like diving into practice problems. It will sound like gibberish. But for Psych Soc, I think it's a great thing to work on. And I do recommend it for any science subjects where you're at like the competency level. Like I just took this class in college. I feel pretty good about it. Not sure what I don't know. Dive into practice problems. Figure it out. Cool. Yeah, so great questions here, guys. Yeah, again, efficiency with that Psych Soc. That's great to hear that you got a good score. Woo-hoo. I personally think UWorld is worth purchasing again, especially if you didn't get through all of it or didn't feel like you used it correctly, whatever that means for you. Again, just to get the volume of questions. So this gets a little into an earlier question, which is how many questions should I do before test day? Or how should I break down my questions per week? In general, what I have seen, and this is now data driven, I've tracked this data now for 2.5 years. I have now seen that 3,000 questions seems to be the magic number. At around 2,000 questions, I start to see improvement. And then at 3,000 questions, we start to really get close to our goal understanding and goal scores. For some students, it's 3,000 questions plus another 500-ish to redo questions that were hard for them, right? Because this isn't like questions you're getting right. This is just questions total. For students who really struggle in the cars section, it's 3,000 plus an additional 500 in cars. So thinking about where you're at, and what you know about yourself, do you tend to need more practice than the average person? Do you tend to need less? And then planning out from there, but 3,000 does seem to be the magic number. This is between AAMC and UWorld in my courses, but it does not include practice exams because practice exams are performance, not practice. So if you think about it, 3,000 questions. What's our goal test date, guys? Go ahead and put it in the chat. Yeah. February, March, April. Okay, let's pick the earliest test date that I see here, which is going to be January, right? And let's look at weeks until January, just to kind of prove this out, right? Weeks until, typing this in, January 23rd, 2026. That is in 13 weeks and 4 days. Let's round down to 13 weeks. Let's divide 3,000 by 13. You are taking 231 questions a week. If you were to hit 3,000 questions, if you were to start today. Like, again, is that reasonable? Is that a reasonable? 230, by the way, is an exam a week, right? Like, so can you do that? Can you do 8 hours of just taking questions, not reviewing, not anything? That's the question, right? So, yeah, if you have a lot of time, great, you'll divide it out and have a smaller amount. So what I like to do is take the total amount of questions I want to complete. So 3,000 is like kind of where we want to be. Feel free to do 3,300 if you think you may need a little more, and then divide that amount by the amount of weeks by your test day. Okay. Now, here's the deal with questions. Somebody asked, how many questions should I do per week? So the average is 230 if you were to be that student. But here's the thing. I have seen, and I want to be really serious about this because this is new data that we just crunched this past month once our courses ended for 2025, and it was kind of shocking. So I'm going to take my glasses off for this. Doing the questions is not enough. I know this is going to be a shocker. Doing the questions is not enough. We, in fact, saw a correlation between students who did questions but did not review those questions and plateauing, not seeing score increase. In other words, if you want to plateau and stay exactly the same, do a bunch of questions without reviewing them. If you actually want to improve, what we see is that you should be doing the questions and then reviewing just slightly less time than it's spent to do the questions. So if you spend 30 minutes doing a question set, you should spend about 25-ish minutes reviewing that question set. A little less because there's a couple questions you'll have gotten correct, right? So that's what we see students be successful. It's not necessarily the number of questions, although that's correlated as well. It's the number of questions and around equal time doing and reviewing. That's where we see improvement. In fact, there was a significant number of students who did a lot of questions, didn't really review, stayed flat the whole time. All right, so how frustrating is that? You've done 3,000 questions, no improvement. Did you review? Did you review effectively? Right, those kinds of questions. So if you are not reviewing your questions, you are not learning. You are just doing, which is helpful for like endurance and things like that, but it's not necessarily helpful to increase your score. And this is the number one issue I see with my students who are not improving. I look at their data and sure enough, their review time is way lower than their due time. And then here's something else. How many of you have used UWorld? Have you guys used UWorld before? Or a QBank where you can like change things? Yeah, the number of 3,000 questions doesn't include practice exams. All right, you guys, okay, a lot of you have used UWorld. You know that tutor mode thing where you can see your answer after every question? Right, that tutor mode, that fun tutor mode. The students who use it plateau. The students who do not use tutor mode improve. Don't use it. Don't use it. It's not helping you learn. All right, it's the same reason why I don't like using Khan Academy for the practice questions where you have to get it right before moving on. It's not helping you learn. All right, why? Because you're getting immediate feedback, that immediate gratification. You don't get that on the real test. You're gonna be looking for that and stressing about whether you got the previous question right because you're so used to seeing that result. So you're not actually in the moment. You're not learning and actually trying to answer the question. You're thinking about the previous question and whether or not you got it right. And that's what the tutor mode trains you to do. It trains you to actually get out of the present and thinking about past questions, which is not going to help you on test day. All right, so do not do it. Promise me you won't, because this is such a crazy correlation I saw. Tutor mode and no review time, flat scores across the board. Yep, yeah, exactly. Also, how are you gonna figure out if you're doing well in cars if you know you got the question wrong on the first one, so you changed your thinking, right? That's not accurate. That's not the real thing. You're not learning what you don't know in that moment. And a lot of times you get distracted, right? You start trying to review the content that you got wrong on question 30 instead of moving on to question 31 like you're supposed to. So you're not practicing your pacing. You're not practicing moving on and letting that question go. All of the strategies that are super important. So please, if you're going to do practice sets, it's okay to do them untimed. I love doing untimed sets. Accuracy is really important, especially early in your prep, over just busting out a ton of questions, but I do not want you to see your answer after every time. It's not good learning. Cool? Cool. Awesome. It's about equal time to review, actually, because yes, there's some that you're guessing on, but for the most part in your practice, I do want you to give every question your best effort. Even if you're not 100% sure what the content is, try to eliminate, right? Try to do the work. So when I train students in UWorld, what I ask them to do is really give full effort to those practice sets, especially smaller ones where you're not working on timing, and instead focusing on accuracy, give it your best effort. And then that way you know where you got stuck. Where if you're just giving up on a question, again, is that accurate learning, right? Is that actually accurate learning? Now, what I have seen is early in your prep, you will spend relatively more time reviewing, and then later in your prep, you'll spend relatively less time reviewing. You're hopefully getting more right, all that stuff. But on average, about equal time do and review. Yeah, I just don't want you having no review, I guess is the point. All right, great questions. So great question about retakers. So for my retakers, there's two things I want you to think about for practice exams. Do I need to retake because there was something about the exam experience that threw me off? Test anxiety, timing issues, major timing issues, panic attacks, endurance, right? Was there something about the full length exam that caused problems? If the answer is yes, I want you taking a lot of full-length exams so that by the time you get there, you feel really, really good. That's where the free Jack Weston ones can be really valuable, actually, because you're just putting in reps for endurance and mental health and mental focus. If you're like, I actually felt okay with the full length, it was just these few key pieces that I didn't really have time to lock down, or on test day, I didn't have the skills quite where I wanted them to be, or there was just something little that threw me off and it kind of, didn't get me quite to the place I wanted. I actually think you need less practice exams, just enough to get back into the zone. I would say like 3 to 4, close to your test day. So one or two just to kind of see where you're at towards the beginning of your prep, and then 3 or 4 towards the end of your prep, and then section tests on your weakest areas. So that way you can kind of be testing yourself on like, okay, I need to work on biochem. Okay, I need to work on cars. But I don't need to see the whole thing the whole time because that's exhausting. And a lot of the reason we do 7 practice exams for my first time test takers is to build that endurance and to build the understanding of the rhythm of the exam. You guys, my retakers, you know that rhythm. So if you don't need to practice something about the full length experience, I would say do like maximum 5, right? Like 3 to 4 is fine, especially closer to your test day to build back up that endurance. Great questions. Doesn't matter. There is no average score for your first full length that I care about. I'll straight up tell you, I've had students improve by 30 points. I've had students that just need to improve by 5. It doesn't matter. Just matter, not to say it doesn't matter at all. I don't care. I'm not looking for a specific first practice exam score. It is purely just a data point to figure out where you are compared to where you want to go. In the same way that if I wanted to drive to LA and I'm in Utah, all right, I have X amount of hours to drive. If you're in Boston, you have X amount more hours to drive. That doesn't mean you can't get to LA. It just means you have to book more time to drive. So same thing with your score. Your first score doesn't matter except to tell you, hey, here's the timeline I need to look at, which is why I always tell students, before you even make a decision about when to take your exam, you need to know where you're starting. So that is taking a practice exam, a full-length practice exam in realistic conditions. I don't care if you haven't started studying. I need to know where you're at in order to help you plan where you're going. It's the same reason why if I want to go to LA and I don't plug in that I'm in Salt Lake City, Google Maps can't create a map for me. It can't tell me how many hours I need to drive because it doesn't know where I'm starting. So if you are planning on taking your MCAT and you have not taken a practice exam, I don't know what the best date for you is. And you don't know what the best date for you is because you don't know where you're starting from. Okay? The ones who already have that data, then you're just planning out how much time do I need to improve. Cool. So how do you do that? How do you know how much time you need to improve? That's a good question. It's kind of what some of you guys have asked, which is, how do I know how long I need? Well, you know how we talked about questions, right? So that's step 1. Do I have time to do 3,000 questions? Now, on average, just so you guys know, right, 59 questions under timed condition is an hour and a half in the sciences, right? Just to kind of like use that as a reference. So if you're thinking about that, like in terms of, okay, I have 59 questions using my calculator because I don't do mental math except when I'm teaching the MCAT. All right, if we're doing 59 questions and that's taking about 95 minutes, that's going to be, right, 5 minutes divided by 59 questions. That's like 1.5 minutes per question, all right? So if you're doing 30 questions, that's gonna be 45 minutes, roughly, plus review time. Remember to multiply by 2. So if I'm doing 30 questions, that's 90 minutes. That's 90 minutes of my time, so to do and review. So if I need to do 90 questions a week, that's 3 hour-and-a-half blocks of time. Do I have that time, right? So the second question is, do I have the time to do the questions I think I am? No one's gonna give you an award for completing 3,000 questions the fastest, right? It's not about how fast you get them done. It's about if you have the time to review and do them properly. So if you're like, oh, Amanda, I can, cram 400 questions a weekend, but you're not reviewing and you're not really learning from it, that doesn't matter, right? You're not gonna improve your score, most likely. Some people do, but that's not expected. So the second question is, do you have time? Now, most MCAT programs, myself included, I'm upping my recommendation from last year, 350 hours is the recommended. 300 is like the minimum. I don't think I've had any students recently who 300 has been enough, honestly. So 350 is what we're shooting for. So again, if you have 12 weeks until your test day, 13 weeks until your test day, that's 30 hours a week of study. Do you have that time? reasonably, where you have nothing else going on, you can focus. And by the way, when I say study, I do not mean going through your Anki decks while watching Love Island or Bridgerton or the football game. I mean like dedicated quality studying. It can include class time. Any classes that are on the MCAT count as studying for the MCAT, of course, like biochem and things like that. But it doesn't, like passive loose studying doesn't count. All right, it's got to be quality studying. So do you have 30 quality hours where you have not just the time, but the attention and energy and focus to do quality studying, right? For most of us, if I have 30 hours of free time, about 20 hours maximum is good quality free time. So is that enough? Is that enough to get where I want to go? If not, move your test date. That's it. All right. In terms of what do you expect to see in terms of improvement, most people that I have worked with improve their score 12 to 15 points. Now, that drastically depends on where you're starting and where you're trying to go, of course, right? Like if you're at a 505 and you just want to get to a 510, you're shooting for a 5-point increase. If you're at a 480 and you're shooting for a 510, that's a 30-point increase. That's a very big difference. But in general, on average, over the course of months, 15 hours of quality studying tends to translate to 1 scaled point. So if you're frustrated that your score has not improved and you have studied 40 hours, we expect to improve like 1 or 2 points, maybe 3. Right? Maybe 3 points there. But we're not expecting like an 8-point jump if you've only studied 30 hours or 40 hours. So be reasonable with your expectation for those practice exam scores. Now, in reality though, it doesn't work like that, right? We all know it doesn't actually go linear. It usually is like plateau, bump. And again, that bump comes from good quality review and self-assessment. Cool. All right, continue asking questions, guys. How do we review? Great question. So let's go into that. How do you review? You are reviewing. Everyone reviews differently, and I have a whole series in my course. The whole orientation week is really about talking about how to study and how to do this. So I won't be able to answer fully in like the AMA time, but the short answer is figure out how your brain likes to encode information. Are you somebody who likes pictures, visuals, T-charts, diagrams, flow charts, mental mind maps? Did you like my YouTube videos because you liked that I draw a lot of things? If so, then you may want to draw things out. So how do you review is to look at the content area as a whole. So let's use 4A, mechanics and energy, right? Work, energy, power, free body diagram, stuff like that. Look at it as a whole and say, okay, what out of this do I not understand? And then you learn it, right? And you write down what I call loose notes. So loose notes is like when you're in class or when you're watching a video and you're just kind of taking notes on things in a free-form style. And you take that loose notes, free-form style, and then you write it all down, and then you look at it later, maybe 2 or 3 days later, and you look at it again and be like, do I understand what I wrote? If not, I got to go back to that source and make sure that I've updated what I wrote to make sure I understand it. And then, maybe a day or 2 later, you consolidate it into something pretty, into something accessible. A lot of people call these master notes, right? Or final study guides. It could be an Anki deck, right? It could be a set of flashcards, but it needs to be consolidated and visually appealing to your brain so that your brain wants to remember it. It understands what the context is, and it's very accessible. It's very easy for you to review again. So like a 1-pager on 4A. Now, I don't mean a cheat sheet. All right, I've seen these all over the internet where it's like piles and piles of information. You have to zoom in to even see what that information is. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something that will help you trigger your memory to discuss further. So you guys probably have all watched my metabolism video at this point. The metabolism video is not an exhaustive understanding of metabolism, right? It's just an overview of the key concepts. But I don't have written out here like which is anabolic and which is catabolic and which is, requiring, these steps and which step is irreversible, because that is something I want to test myself on in the mental model. So I have this mental model, and then I'm asking myself, do I know the steps of glycolysis? Do I know that if glucose is high, I'm using this and this and this pathway? Do I understand that the mitochondria requires oxygen, and what does that mean, right? So I'm using it as a jumping off point to test my own knowledge. How do you test your knowledge? Practice questions, right? So you're using those practice questions to see that, does my mental model actually match up with what I need to know? And if the answer is no, then you go back and change that mental model. You add it in. but we want to not fill it with stuff because we want it to be a trigger to actually have you learn, right? Have you like remember the information. So that's like the loose way. That's like my quick and dirty 5-minute lesson on how to review. In reality, there's like a lot to it, of course. It's a whole skill, but figuring out what works for you is also important. Great. Yeah, write down a lot is fine, but writing down anything that you already know, not okay, not okay, but not useful, right? Write down as simple as possible what you don't know. Again, you don't want to just have a handwritten book that you're learning from. Think about what's the key important information that I need to remember. Does it make sense to write it down? Should I just draw a little picture, right? Should I have just one word and that will remind me what I'm talking about? Simplify it. What's the simplest, least amount of information I can provide to remind me of this topic, right? It doesn't have to be exhaustive because the MCAT's not exhaustive. It's surface level for the vast majority of the topics. So making sure that you deeply understand the surface rather than deeply understand the depth and ignore half the surface. Yeah, and we'll go into that in more depth as well in the course. Yeah. For practicing full-length section tests, I mentioned this earlier, I like Jack Weston's. They have on their website 6 practice tests that are just cars, and I think 6 full-length exams that you could do cars with. They're oriented in the AAMC style. They're pretty decent, not like gold standard, I would say, but they're pretty decent. Again, using Your World is fine too. And then honestly, like going into AAMC and doing 9 passages in a row there. All right, so all those are good options. But Jack Weston has 12 between his full lengths and his section tests, so I think that's plenty. Yeah, great question. All right. Yeah, so doing and reviewing, part of the review process is to make sure you're gathering information. I don't want you reviewing this and that and that. I mean, one of the other mistakes I see with students with reviewing is that they'll like, oh, I need to learn torque. Oh, I also need to learn Archimedes principle. Oh, I also need to learn what's some random bio topic. I need to learn cell theory, right? And so they're pinging their brain everywhere, and those are completely disparate topics. Instead, I want you to like do some practice or do some general review and say, okay, out of all of physics, here are the topics that go together that I don't know, right? Like I don't know simple machines, including torque and fulcrums, right? So I should spend an hour learning simple machines and making a study guide on that. And then I'll test myself with UWorld questions and adjust my study guide. Okay, I've kind of gathered information, realized that like, I don't understand the definitions of fluids. Like part of the issue is I'm trying to learn buoyancy, but I don't even know how fluids work. So let me go back and watch a video that's like high school level about fluids, because that's where I'm actually missing my knowledge. Maybe actually with circuits, I completely understand circuits and concept. I get all the definition questions right. It's the math that's the issue. I've got to practice my math skills. So gather data before just diving into random topics and just Googling things on YouTube. All right, it's just not efficient, right? Have a list. And then once you gather enough data to actually put effort into that topic, then go put effort into that topic. Yeah. I haven't had a good question about the bootcamp one. I've had a couple students recently reach out to me who have used it, but they're reaching out to me for additional coaching. So I don't want to bash anyone else's resource, of course, and it may work, but all I know about them is I have had students come to us after using them. So I don't know what they do really. I'm assuming it's a lot of skill work, which is great. But again, a lot of CARS is personal self-assessment. What are you doing well? What's your reasoning versus what's the MCAT reasoning? And how do we get that together versus just learning basic skills? A lot of the skill work I do is actually not teaching you how to do CARS, but teaching you how to think about how you do CARS. Which is like, how am I thinking? Where am I going off of the AAMC logic? And kind of like, where can I make those match? So sometimes one of the issues I have with too much structure to CARS is that you may not have time to play with your own strengths and weaknesses. But again, I don't know enough about their program to be able to like advertise it or denounce it, honestly. So if it seems like it'll work, it's definitely one of the only CARS only resources out there that I've heard about recently. So yeah. Yeah, for one-on-one coaching for cars, it's on my website. We have, we just do hourly rate for one-on-one coaching. We have some really great car-specific coaches that are in the program, and you're more than welcome to sign up. And my coaching manager, Anastasia, basically matches you based on what you want to work on to the coach that has the best skill. So we have like a nice little matchup that we do. Yeah, cars timing. Cars timing is a symptom, right? It's like a fever. The fever is not causing your illness, it's caused by an illness. So what's causing your timing issue? Where are you running out of time? Would be the question I would first ask. Is it reading the passage? Is it answering the questions within a minute? Is it getting overwhelmed and having to reread? What's the issues, right? That's the first question. You never say, okay, like, yes, we can treat the fever a little bit, right? We can take, a fever reducer, but really what we want to say is like, is this a bacterial infection? Is this a virus? Is this that you just went into a sauna, right? What is going on here? So self-assess, why am I having a timing issue? That's the question to answer, because that's what needs fixing. Yeah. Yeah, so both a little bit. The thing I would then self-assess is, if I'm given 7 minutes every time to read the passage, do I get questions right every time? If I'm given 2 minutes to read the passage, do I get the questions right every time? If so, lighten up one or the other. Like if when you read the passage for 7 minutes, you always get the question right, then I would try to tighten up your question timing. If it's the questions that need more of the time than the passage, then I would try to tighten up the passage timing. If you're super accurate with that timing, give up on a passage and you'll still probably do pretty well. But my guess is that maybe you're just taking a little long to think about everything. So trusting your interpretation, trusting that you don't need to understand it perfect, and forcing yourself to get like the core ideas and to trust your answers versus like thinking, double checking, going back to the passage, thinking, double checking, going back to the passage. So short answer, again, hard to say without digging in deeper. Yeah. How do you learn how to read for cars? Read. Read a lot. I will tell you, this answers another question too. There is no one magic strategy for cars. Anyone who tries to sell you that is wrong. I've not seen any strategy, and I've worked with over 1,000 students now, that works for every single student for cars. It's going to be different for each of you. There are some strategies that tend to work better for most students, but there's no one magic strategy except for one thing, and that is reading. Every single student who I have them read 30 minutes a day, nonfiction, every single day, they improve their car score. So read The New Yorker, read The Economist, I have a reading list on my website. So pick a book from my reading list. They're all cars level. Nonfiction, academic writing. All right. So unfortunately, fantasy doesn't count. No romantasy or sci-fi. I know that's fun, but we're talking academic writing, nonfiction. If you read 30 minutes a day, it'll help. It'll help your speed, help your retention, help your confidence. Yep. Yeah, it's just reading. I will tell you, I wish there was a magic trick. I'd probably like do pretty well on the Reddit markets if there was, but it's just reading. And again, there are some skills that definitely work, but you need to try them out and see if they work for you. So like I have some students, like for example, I tell most students, do not pre-read the questions. Like read the passage, then do the questions. And the reason why is for most students, that is the best strategy. Pre-reading the questions actually decreases their accuracy and takes more time. There are exceptions. There are students who I've worked with who we actually had them do a pre-read of the questions and they did better. So even for my most strong opinions on strategy, there are exceptions to that rule. So the key thing for you is try a strategy for at least a week and test whether it works. Test whether you're increasing your accuracy and your speed. If not, it doesn't work, right? You don't have to, nor you can if you want, if it helps your retention. But what I do recommend is at the end of 30 minutes, in your head at least, but maybe on a piece of paper at the end of 30 minutes, is saying like, what did I just read? Do I remember what I read? Do I have the gist of what I read? And try to force yourself to put it into words. That helps. Yeah, but you don't have to take notes as you read unless it helps with your retention. And you want to practice like your note taking and your shorthand. Great questions. All right, we're keeping going. You guys are doing great with these questions. Yeah, so in terms of structuring your UWorld and your practice problems, this is going to depend on your schedule and what you like. I have some students that have kind of open free time, and they really like doing like full days where they're doing like 3 or 4 hours of practice questions and then like 2 or 3 hours of review, and then other days where it's just like gentle review of their study guides and flashcards. I have some students that like to do a little bit every day with like 1 day off. And I have some students where, due to their life schedule, they have to just fit it in where they have free time. So the key thing is to make it work for your schedule. One of the beauteous things about MCAT Prep is that you can design your studying the way that works for you and around your life, right? It's not like there's a due date, except for the one that you set for yourself. So think about how you want to organize your life and how you want to kind of build that structure. If you have no idea, that's where courses can help, right? That's why I built the course that I did, because it provides that structure if you don't know that about yourself. Ooh, weighted question there. What's a decent MCAT score? Yeah, so that is depending on where you want to go. Depending on where you want to go to medical school. I have some programs that I work with where it's a linkage program and the students need a 502 or higher. And in that case, a good MCAT score is a 502 or higher. I have other programs where students are just coming from undergrad and they want to get into MD programs, and most advisors tell them they need a 510 in order to be supported by their application. I have other programs or students who want to go to a top 15 MD PhD program, and the average MCAT score is a 518. And so we need that 518 or higher. I have other students who have incredibly high GPAs and amazing experiences, and they just need a good enough score, which for most students is between a 500 and 505, depending on the types of programs they're looking at. If you have an excellent other part of your application, particularly around GPA. I have other students where their GPA is low and they need to show academic readiness, so they need a higher MCAT score to compensate. So what's a good MCAT score will depend on you. I would definitely recommend talking to a pre-health advisor who can kind of help you define that for yourself and depending on your school list. I'm not a pre-health advisor. I stay out of that world. I like doing MCAT prep. The admission cycle seems really stressful to manage, so we stay in our little MCAT prep world over here. But it will depend on both your application, particularly your GPA, and where you want to go to school. The type of schools that you're looking at, those are going to be the two factors. Yeah. Oh, great question. Passage-based text, what do you don't understand? Yeah, what do I understand? That's the question. I'll usually be like, okay, this thing looks weird. I've got to at least understand some words, right? Like, you guys couldn't have gotten through pre-medical education without learning a lot of words. So what do I understand? Can I at least identify the subject? Can I at least identify the general topic? Are there any words I recognize? If it's a science passage, maybe there's an enzyme name I recognize, or they're mentioning amino acids, okay, proteins, right? So you kind of work with that. Or do I at least understand what the figure is telling me? If it's cars, do I at least get the gist of the main idea? Like, okay, are we talking about art history? Okay, are we talking about Walt Whitman? Okay, does the author like, hate, or feel neutral about that topic? Can I at least get there? So start with basic, and then what that usually does is it breaks your brain out of the holy crap, I don't know what's going on mentality, and then you'll actually absorb more than you think. All right, but the start is to be like, what is the most basic understanding I can have of this passage? Can I at least get the subject? And then that usually lets your brain start to work with it, and you'll understand more than you think once you get there. Great question. Yeah, so study plans. In general, I recommend having a very specific study plan in terms of the blocks of time you are dedicating to MCAT. So you should have some sacred dedicated time each week that you are dedicating to MCAT that has nothing else can get scheduled, and that should be really structured. In terms of what goes in that block can change on like an up to week basis based on how you're performing in all of your work and what your energy level is. So let's say that you get to 6 o'clock and you have your MCAT block and you were supposed to do a CARS section test. And you're like, I'm a 3 out of 10 on energy. I had a rough day. You're not going to have a successful CARS section test. It's not going to be a helpful piece of information for you to learn from if you can't use your strategy. So maybe you say, you know what? Today I was supposed to do CARS section. Tomorrow I'm supposed to do Psych Soc. I'm going to flip those and do Psych Soc today because it's a little easier on my brain. And I only have 3 out of 10 energy. On the flip side, if you get to a study block and you're feeling really good, do what's hard for you. Like, hey, I'm feeling really good today. And have a list of topics that you want to get done on a week-to-week level in terms of number of questions and topics. So here's the number of questions I want to complete per week, and here's how many in each topic I want to complete. I usually have students adjust their schedule on a week-to-week basis because things change, right? Maybe you are really struggling with cell bio, and then you had like a breakthrough, and now cell bio isn't hard anymore. You don't need to keep studying that, move on to practice questions, and go study something else, right? So as soon as you have even like the barest grasp of a subject, move on to practice questions, study something else. Because the study time, the content review time, is your most usually exhausting and most valuable time. It should be on stuff that you actively don't know. Anything you kind of know already can go into passive review or practice problems. So I change on a week to week. I know that feels a little less structured and maybe a little daunting, but what it does is it allows you flexibility to work with your energy and work on what you actually need to work on, instead of just like following a set plan. Yeah, guys, continue to put, if I missed your question, we have a lot of great ones. So if I missed your question, you're still waiting for me to answer it, pop it back in the chat, okay? Thanks so much, guys. I can only see so much. No, I don't necessarily require students to know everything in the course. In fact, I'll jump ahead just for a second. We have what I call now a foundation series that we built this fall. That is the 6 weeks before the course starts. So our course starts end of December, and the foundations course is going to start the third week of November. And what it's going to do is it's going to cover all the what we call the foundational knowledge that I want you to know for the MCAT. So there are a list of topics that I do expect all students to know coming into the course. We have those with learning objectives. So if you want to prepare for the course, what I would say is to dedicate at least 6 weeks to doing those learning objectives. You can either join the foundation series where we have classes and my coach is teaching those topics if you want the structure. But even if you don't, anybody who's in my course, I want you going through those learning objectives and making sure all of those you feel good about, because that's what I expect you to know coming into the course. I don't expect you to have done all the content because that's part of my job, is to teach you some of that hard stuff, the more complex stuff. So I want you to have the foundational knowledge, which I really mean like, what are atoms? What's cell theory? What are eukaryotes and prokaryotes, right? Like, what is force? A lot of like what is and definitions and kind of baseline knowledge, how to do mental math, how to divide by decimals, that kind of thing, and basic research design. And then we take that kind of foundational knowledge and go into kind of the MCAT favorites, complex topics, integrated topics that are covered on the MCAT. We don't cover everything in the 6 weeks, but we cover a lot. And we also give you insight and extra resources on the other things we don't cover. So to answer your question, no, except for foundational knowledge, CARS work. I like students to have been doing some CARS work so they come in knowing what they are stressed about with CARS, reading, and research design basics. So like those are the key things. And then knowing what you don't know, right? Knowing what you're like, here's where my gaps are in my understanding, so that you can come to class with questions. You can come to the review sessions that we hold and get those questions answered. So no, I definitely don't expect you to be an expert. Otherwise you wouldn't need me, right? So we do a lot of strategy work as well, but strategy and content go together. Great questions. Content review and practice questions. Yeah, Khan Academy practice passages. When I say practice questions, I do mean like AAMC style practice questions. So either AAMC, UWorld, or Khan Academy, right? Or Jack Weston for CARS is the ones I recommend. So yeah, what I usually say, as soon as students are at like 60 to 70% confidence in a content area, I want you going into practice problems. Right? Like, I don't need you to know it perfectly. Your goal with practice problems is not to get all your practice problems correct. Your goal is to get the right things wrong so you know what to review further. So as soon as you have a grasp of the content, you got to move into practice problems. Okay? And for a lot of you, that means starting with practice problems right away on the content you're already feeling pretty good about. Yeah. Great questions, guys. Yes, I'm continuing to upload more content videos. I have a lot more courses actually that are running, which is like exciting, but takes a lot of my time because I teach them all. So I'm going to be doing my best to film content videos. I just filmed a kinematics one that will hopefully be posted within a month. It's just getting edited right now. I'm hoping to post once a month, and then also have a YouTube live once a month that will go through some content work as well. So those are the two things I'm doing. And again, we do have the courses available for people who are studying. Yeah. Oh yes. So the content, the foundation series is currently only offered to students who are in the winter course. And so once you sign up for the winter course, you'll have the option to also enroll in the content series, the foundational series. And that's where it'll also show you like the to-do list of topics. So if you look through those and you're like, I know all that already, don't sign up for the foundation series. But if you look through it and you're like, ooh, yeah, I definitely need help on all of that, and I know I won't study it on my own, or I'm stressed about studying it on my own, then I would join us in the foundation series. That's kind of how we're doing it. Great. Yeah, good questions. And there should still be a link to like show you the schedule for the foundation series on there. But yeah, it'll show up once you enroll. Oh yeah, good news about meiosis, it's not heavily tested. It's like one question, but yes, it is on my to-do list to do mitosis, meiosis, and cell reproduction, because it is in my foundational topics that like I do like students have a basic idea of. But yes, it's on my list, but it's also not a super high yield topic. Like if you wanted to be like meiosis is my thing I'm not caring about, it probably won't hurt your score. Like you can, I always give students like 2 to 3 topics that at most get 1 question on the MCAT on that I give you permission to not learn. For me, it was oxidation numbers and ice tables. I think were my 2. They were both in Gen Chem. I know how to do them now, but at the time I was like, I'm giving myself permission, didn't hurt my score, right? So 1 question won't do it, but like amino acids, sorry guys, you gotta learn them, right? That's it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great question about the exam portal. Again, it's down because of the Amazon Web Services being down all morning. My guess is that by tomorrow morning, it should be back online because they're planning on doing registration as normal. So I would log in kind of early tomorrow morning for my East Coasters. For my West Coasters, you have until Wednesday to make sure your registration stuff is in there. So I just log in early. They should be good to go. If they're going to run registration tomorrow at noon Eastern, that portal's got to be up. So my expectation is that it'll be up by tomorrow morning. Yeah. If it's not, they're not going to do registration at all. So they'll announce that if that happens. Yeah. Yeah, more genetics. Okay, yeah, I can definitely do more genetics. Absolutely. Do you guys want to hear about, you guys can put in more questions as you do, but do you guys want to hear about the new exam? It was so fun. I haven't done a full exam in like a couple years. So that was a fun experience for me. I will have you know, she still got it. She did great. But some interesting things. This is some new stuff. Number 1, the sections that felt the most typical were Chem Phys and actually Biochem. And I don't mean easy, I mean typical. So Chem Phys, I intentionally flagged all the questions that required significant math. There were 11. All right, so there were 11 questions that required doing your math out, logarithms, unit conversions, millimole to mole, right? That kind of thing. So a lot of like basic math, but still math. Some acid-base kind of based math and stuff like that. So definitely please work on your math skills, all right? And I'm talking foundational math skills, like can you divide, can you multiply, do you know your times tables? Like all of that stuff I want to be locked solid because I don't want you getting a question wrong because you multiplied 8 by 9 wrong, all right? So definitely please do your math work, all right? Basic math is fine, all right? You can look up like scientific notation, practice from high school and you can do that, but I want you to feel really good about that work because there was 3 skilled points worth of questions on math. Okay. Yep. So just get it done. That's okay. There was a decent amount of like definition physics, which I actually was excited to see. There was less calculation physics and like advanced physics and more like, what is this thing? Like, what is this, what does this do? What does this term mean? What is this type of energy, right? That stuff. So just make sure you have your definitions down on physics and you're not just so focused on calculating torque that you forget to talk about like the types of energy and the definitions of those. So definitions for physics. Gen Chem felt pretty typical, right? Like again, some math, some basic foundational stuff. Bonding was a big thing. And then interestingly, I'm going to make a video on this, so don't you guys worry, but a lot of spectroscopy, NMR, IR, lab techniques, lots and lots of stuff there, and details, relatively strong details there. So I'm going to make a video about NMR. I think it's an important topic now based on that. So that was the big things. Orgo felt typical, just lots of structures, not a lot of reaction types, a lot more just like, what is this structure? What is this structure? What is this structure that relates to biochemistry? So lots and lots of structure stuff in Orgo. And that overlap with Orgo and biochem was pretty typical. All right. Cars. Yeah, that was fun. Research cars. So I heard from a couple programs, medical programs. By the way, I am going to NAP in New Orleans, which is the National Health Advisors Conference. I currently don't have any others planned, but if you guys have a conference that you think I should go to, like a student conference that you're planning on going to, let me know. I'm happy to always add more to my schedule. But I wanted to mention a lot of medical schools have been concerned about the level of research literacy of their medical students. And I think I'm seeing that in this new exam because both CARS and Psych-Soc had passage after passage that was like hypothesis, conclusion, hypothesis, research, data, right? Like even in CARS, which I don't expect, it was like research in the humanities and research in the social science where they're describing like a study about economics, but it like used the word hypothesis and conclusion and they tested about sample size. So I just want you to know that like research design is super important and understanding the different research terms. I have an old video on it, but it's an oldie but goodie. I think still super relevant. It's a 20-minute video. It's one of my longer ones. I go through a lot of research stuff in my class because I'm just seeing it over and over, but like knowing your hypotheses, knowing your conclusions, knowing how to read research, knowing how to read research studies from a variety of topics and understand like limitations on those is something that I just saw over and over and over again. Confounding variables, biases, and weirdly coming up in CARS. Like in order to read the passage comfortably, I had to be comfortable navigating a research design. So definitely something to note. Other thing I noticed in CARS is that there are a couple really strongly opinionated passages. So definitely some author tone stuff, some main idea. Nothing felt too overly wordy, but there were a couple that were more boring than others. But when I went through it, just so you guys know, when I do this kind of stuff, I basically tried to use all the strategies and stuff that I teach. And I did it exactly, I took my notes, I highlighted, I took my time, I took my breathings between passages. Like I tried to do it exactly how I would tell a student to do, elimination strategies, all of that stuff. It worked, all right? I got my 132 in CARS. So what that tells me is that there was nothing weird or surprising about it. Like there wasn't, like they weren't going in a different direction with their logic or anything like that because the system worked. So continue to trust like author opinion, main idea. If it's in the passage, I can use it. If it's not in the passage, I can't, right? Those kinds of rules that come up over and over again, right? Biochem looked really scary. Lots of scary looking passages, lots of scary looking questions, but very simple in terms of content and execution. So a lot of it was like, can I cut through the noise and actually just answer the question being asked? Like, yes, this whole passage looks really scary. The question stem's really chunky. Oh, but they're just asking what needs to be there for DNA replication. There's only one answer with polymerase, so I gotta pick it, right? So a lot of it was like cutting through the scary looking stuff to the key foundational content that they're actually testing. And then it wasn't so bad. And then some research design. So again, data analysis, being able to read SDS page gels came up a lot, which is great because I love that video that I filmed for YouTube. So definitely watch that video, it'll come in handy. And kind of basic research design and biochem as well. Last thing, the Psych-Soc section was really hard. All right, like that one was like rough and I did it at the end. So like I felt tired, just like you guys will feel. It was wordy. I don't know if my retakers felt this way about their real exam last year, but man, was it wordy. It was like lots of dense passages, lots of dense questions, a lot of like interpretation of the passage in order to answer the question right. So, and then there were passages that were just terms. So it was like passages where you just had to know the terms and then passages where it was like all research design and interpretation. So it felt very like mentally taxing. I ended up reordering and doing all the term ones first and then the research design one second, just so I could like organize my brain. But yeah, it was wordy. It was hard. I had to work pretty effortfully to keep my brain engaged. So just be prepared for that. I think they're intentionally making Psych-Soc harder because I think they've heard you guys being like, Psych-Soc isn't that hard on the Reddits, and now they're like, okay, we're gonna make it harder. But it's very research design focused. There were over 15 questions that require knowledge of research design. So that's what I got for takeaways. Overall, though, I was happy with the test because I felt like there wasn't anything too weird. In fact, compared to the Section Bank Volume 2 that was released last year, I felt it was like very true to form for what they say they're going to test and what they're going to prioritize. So I wouldn't stress too much about doing a bunch of weird stuff. Focus on the key ideas that really help with your core knowledge of concepts, and then the memorization that needs to happen, of course, amino acids, structures, all organic structures, functional groups, knowing your math and your unit conversions, and then your aerobic respiration steps and structures. Little steps, structures, knowing all your citric acid cycle intermediates and stuff is important. Yeah. I do, as part of the course, we have like a whole module on it. I'm adapting some of it for YouTube, so hopefully that'll be getting up and going. But honestly, I think a lot of it is also just like reading research. And like reading some PubMed articles, reading some research articles on topics that maybe you feel nervous about. It can be part of your reading exercises so that you get more and more comfortable with research design and understanding those tools. I will say Blueprint does a pretty good job also of testing a lot of research design in their practice exams. Yeah, cutting through the biochem noise, I tell myself, I don't need to understand this. I just need to find the terms I know, right? Like, okay, here's this weird long name of this enzyme. What is this enzyme? Oh, it's cutting a protein. It's a protease. I'm just going to write down protease, right? So taking all that noise and being like, what is this thing actually doing? Oh, it's metabolism. Oh, it's cell biology. Oh, this is a bacteria. Okay, I know things about bacteria, so I'm just going to remember what I know about bacteria to answer the question. Yeah. I've never seen any structures for things that are not aerobic respiration. I have seen some like key features, like understanding where beta oxidation happens, understanding the point of pentose phosphate pathway, like the goal. But the only structures I've ever seen on AAMC material have been citric acid cycle, and then once in a while, glycolysis. So I would say like aerobic respiration is the thing to know structures and like intermediates and individual steps. Everything else I would just know key features, like when we use them, and then like where they exist and what's important in the steps, like rate limiting step, key ideas. Beta oxidation comes up a lot, but it comes up a lot in the passage. Like they'll show you beta oxidation and then ask you questions about it. So the only thing I've ever seen that you need to memorize is like citric acid cycle, glycolysis, and electron transport chain. Yeah. Cool. All right, guys, you are asking amazing questions here. Is there anything else I didn't answer that you guys definitely want to know? We're doing good. I want to give you guys the code. So stay if you're interested in the winter cohort, because I do have a code for you. If you are already in my courses, especially fall cohort, we're sending out a lot of stuff for you over the next couple days. So keep yourself tuned. And if you're interested in the foundation series, again, that's going to be available to you after you register for winter. Yeah, great questions. Yeah. Yeah, I would say, again, burnout is always a concern. Difference between February and March is really only a few weeks, right? It's at most a month. Again, I would look at your life. I would look at like, is February to March going to get busy? Or do I have that time? Again, I always err on the side of caution because we can always take mini breaks if you're feeling the burnout versus like letting yourself get too far. That's always the management, is like, I'd rather take a 2-day or 3-day break now than keep going and burn myself out for like 2 weeks later, right close to test day. So that's part of like managing your energy and checking in with like, do I need a short break? But again, a lot of that does depend on your initial practice exam score. So feel free to reach out. If you have questions specific to your practice exam scores, I'm happy to answer. But again, in general, I err on the side of caution and say like, if you're asking me my advice, and there's no strong reason to do one date over the other from like a lifestyle perspective, I like students choosing the later date, unless there's a compelling reason not to, because we can manage burnout as we get there. Yeah, structures. Short answer, your 20 amino acids, I have a video on that. Your 5 nucleotide structures, your basic fats, like fatty acids, phospholipids versus triglycerols versus cholesterol, all of your functional groups, every functional group that comes up on Orgo. A lot of Orgo websites have this list. I don't have it because I like students to draw them out themselves, so I just have like a typed list, but like every functional group. I think Master Organic Chemistry has a pretty good one, but you'll see them as you do practice too. So you can also just put them on your cards like aldehydes, ketones, pyrrole rings, that kind of thing. Yeah, so just functional groups, amino acid, and then your like macromolecules. Yeah. Yeah, cholesterol is huge. They love cholesterol. Yep, you can reach out, or again, my email is amanda@bremmethod.com. I'll put that in here. You can reach out to either email or both at bremmethod.com if you guys have questions. Yeah, if you're already in the winter cohort, we're going to help you. We're going to get you set up. So just feel free to reach out about specifics around your date, and we're here to help with that, especially knowing where you're going to be in the winter cohort. I would say if you're winter, I would definitely recommend a March test date if you can, because we're ending winter February 5th. And actually, let me go ahead and pop that up on the screen for us, guys, just so you guys who are interested can know our dates, because we're coming close on time here. So here are our winter cohort dates, and a little note about registration opening this week, of course. Since it's February 5th, if there's anything you want to keep working on after the course, or that we've noticed, like, hey, it'd be great to get another practice exam in, it's just a little tight to the February 13th test date, right? It's 6 days later. Not 6 days, 8 days later. But so, like, I would love a little extra time just to support you after the course ends on getting some extra practice in. But if you think you're going to be able to stay really consistent with the schedule, again, you really want to get it over with, you feel really good about like where you're going to be at the end of December going into the course, like we'd love for you to be within 8 points of your goal score, because we see on average students increase 8 points from the start of the course to the end of the course. So we want students to come in. If they're going to take their exam right after the course ends, we want you to be within 8 or 9 points of your goal score, so we can help you with that. If students have more time after the course, it's okay if they're further out from their goal score. So that's kind of how we do things for the course. All right, so here's this before we wrap up. Yep, there's still room in the winter course. We just opened it just over a week ago, so we still have room in both cohorts. It is filling up. We've gotten a couple sites, but we should have plenty of spaces right now, so that is great. Let me go ahead and put up our I do have a YouTube code. Let me go ahead and put it in the chat for you. It's YouTube 150. YouTube 150. And that should work till Friday. Okay, guys? It'll work till Friday at midnight. All right. So for those that need to register first and all that stuff, it'll stay open, that discount code till Friday. And then early registration ends in November. So getting that going. How much of the class is content versus strategic? About 35%, 65%. It used to be a little bit more, but with the foundation series, we've taken out some of the foundation stuff and added in a little bit more strategy and research design work to give us more time for that. The class schedule, just so you can kind of see it here, let me just go ahead and flip over, does include, I don't have the full class schedule, but I have the kind of week by week. What we do is you're going to check in with your coach every week. You have an assistant coach who's like a peer mentor that supports you. You're going to check in, just kind of gut check, burnout check. Are you staying on top of your plan and your goal, UWorld questions and your homework assignments? You're going to watch the pre-class video and quiz. This is the content side, where you're going to prepare for class by reviewing the core concepts we expect you to know and review any basic things that are a little rusty. Then you're going to be in class with me, which is, again, at the beginning of the course, it's more content focused. So the first few classes, we kind of work on like physics, organic chemistry, biochemistry, and make sure that we all are on the same page about the core content there. But we also do practice questions every lesson. So lesson, practice question, much like my YouTube videos, if you're curious. Towards the second half of the course, we do passages. So we're going to do active passage practice together, work through those passages as a unit, go through them. If anyone was at my YouTube lives like over the spring and summer, it's much like that, where you do a passage and then we review it together. So that's kind of that more strategy work. Then you're going to review your challenges that came up in class, complete a homework set in UWorld that I designed to really emphasize what we learned. So that's your kind of review and active practice. And then we have group review sessions 3 times a week that you can attend on priority topics that will help you build your mental models, reinforce ideas, quiz yourself with our assistant coaches. We also have mental fitness work you're going to complete each week to make sure your mentality is ready for test day. And then you go and complete your post-class and pre-class work for class 2. So it does expect about 15 hours a week of work. So just for reference, like we do really find that like 15 hours a week is what we see students be really successful in. Anything less, and it's just hard to make progress, and then we get demotivated. We want you to attend the live sessions if you can, but we do record every session if you can't make it. You're going to meet with your coaches every week for 15 minutes. Again, it's more of a check-in, gut check, emotional check-in. Make sure we're supporting you the best we can. You're going to complete your class assignments on time. You have a week to complete each assignment. And then, of course, if you have anything that comes up, we'll communicate with you and help you adjust. So that is the plan. I'm sorry to hear that. I know courses aren't, so those courses, I'm not going to bash anybody else's courses, but I'm very proud of my course and kind of the results we see. But again, like, remember, retakers, the other advice I have for my retakers, I'm just going to put the cohort dates back up here for you guys. But my other advice for retakers, you're not starting at the bottom of the mountain. You've already done a ton of work. Try not to start from scratch. Instead, think about, hey, what made that climb so difficult? Where did I kind of just go in circles? And what do I need to help me guide up the rest of the mountain? And that could just be a few targeted tutoring sessions. It could just be a lot more practice and a lot more self-assessment and good quality review. It could be trusting yourself more and not worrying about remembering every little detail of content that's on this exam. So just, again, one of the things I want you to remember, if you're retaking, you're already halfway up the mountain because you know this test, you know your strengths and weaknesses, you understand the passage style. Like my first time test takers, if you're still in the room, like it's a lot to learn, right? It's a lot to learn about this exam, learn how the passages work, learn what's tested, learn the topics. Like retakers, you know all of that. So don't feel like you're starting from scratch. You're starting halfway up, but the key thing is to say, I don't want to run back down the mountain just to climb back up, right? I don't want to start back at chapter 1. So think clearly about what you actually need to get from where you're at on the mountain to where you want to be. And make sure that you're not just going down for the sake of completion, right? Yeah. Yeah, your coach will reach out to you once we assign them. For the winter course, we assign the coaches once registration closes, unless you are in the foundation series. And then, of course, you'll get access to the coaches that are going to be teaching the course in the foundation series, and you can ask them questions throughout that. But we usually set up the Slack channel after early enrollment ends. So we'll be setting up the Slack channel shortly in a few weeks, and then you'll be able to start asking questions of the group, and then you'll get your specific coach assignment as we get close to tests or the start of the course once enrollment ends, and we kind of give the coach assignments, and at that point you'll set up your first meeting with your coach. We do, in the class, we do UWorld questions and AAMC questions. So the classroom, when we're doing individual questions and learning, we will use AAMC for the most part. And then when we're doing active passage practice together and for homework, it's all in UWorld. So it's all AAMC style. It's meant to be not easier or harder than the exam, but exactly in line with the exam. And I have curated these lists, these questions over years as the ones that I find to be like really representative, really effective at teaching students certain skills and things that I want you to know for test day. So it's similar, again, like I said, it's very similar to my YouTube videos where I'm trying to really curate, like, what do you really need to know and how is that tested? So it's very similar to the classroom in that way. Yeah, and then we, of course, have some foundational questions before the class. That's more like testing your core knowledge. And then we have bonus sets as well in UWorld and other assignments that you can do in our learning platform. So lots of stuff if you want it. Oh no, the course is for everything. Sorry, yeah, the course is for everything, covers the whole MCAT. Like my goal with it, with designing the course was like, here's everything I want students to know before their test day. So we do physics, we do cars, we do, cars is class 2 because physics and cars are the hardest to improve in a short time. So we do it first. Then we do organic chemistry and biochemistry, general chemistry, and then biology, and then we go into integrated cumulative practice. So that's kind of the flow of the class assignments. And I use the class titles like physics and gen chem, but of course we know on the MCAT it's very integrated. We do psych soc as well, so that's in there as well. We do just more active practice, like I said, with psych soc. So great questions. Yeah, genetics is a high yield topic, but the foundations of genetics are what's important, right? Like you don't need to memorize the replosome, but you do need to know when the replosome works, which is during DNA replication, which is in all cells that are actively dividing, not in like cells that are making proteins, right? Like it's stuff like that. It's like, it's 10 to 11 questions per exam, but it's a lot of like, do you know the foundational knowledge? And then biotech is the other thing that comes up in that subject area with genetics, which is in 1B. So understanding things like SDS page and gel electrophoresis and things like that also comes up. Yeah, it's a big topic. We spend a lot of time on it in class. So the AAMC bundle is not included. We have a discount code if you do need it. It's, I think, $290 instead of the $350 or whatever it is on the website. The reason we don't include it is because a lot of students either have access because they retook it or are retaking it, or if you're on the fee assistance program, you get that for free and we don't want to charge you for something you already have. So it is an add-on if you need it. We do request that you have access to the AAMC materials by the start of the course, because it's something that we include in part of the course. Cool. Or at least help you build. Yeah. So here's the thing about list of things to memorize. No, you need to know your own list of things to memorize, because some things you don't need to memorize because it's already in your head. So yes, there's things that are important to know in terms of what you need to actively memorize. It's the stuff that you're getting wrong that you need to lock in. Yes, structures are, for an example, something to memorize in theory, but some students find that memorizing structures is actually harder than just like learning like the relationships between the structures. So for example, understanding that a pyrrhose ring, right, a pyrrhose ring in sugar is a pyrran ring, which is a six-membered ring with an oxygen in it, and then os for sugar, right? Like that breakdown of those words makes more sense than just memorizing pyranose. So I hesitate to just give people to be memorized lists. Instead, what I want you to do is build it, and then you can always check it with our coaches, right? Like that's part of our job. I don't want you to stress about like, here's all this stuff I need to do before the course. Part of our job is to help you, give you the list of things to know and to worry about. And then anything beyond that's like a nice to know, but not usually a need to know because it doesn't show up. Yeah. So that's part of my job too, is to kind of have the like boundaries of what we typically see on the MCAT. Not that I can promise that there won't be other weird stuff, because there's always weird stuff, but like the vast majority of questions we have a good grasp on at this point. Only UWorld, and UWorld is purchased through us. So you do not need to purchase UWorld. We will purchase it. We have to purchase it actually. So if you already have access to UWorld, you can request a refund from them if you're going to sign up for a course, because we have to purchase it on your behalf to give you homework. You do not need the AAMC until you start your like really active studying. We just request that you take an AAMC practice exam before the start of the course. So before December 29th. We want you to take an AAMC practice exam. There are 2 free ones, so you don't need to purchase the AAMC materials until after that. We just want you to have them at some point in your prep because they are important to do all those practice exams and practice sets, or a chunk of it. Yeah. Oh, you can absolutely take the foundations course as a retaker. Yeah, it's more, the question for foundation series is when you look at that list of topics, is this mostly things you already know? Don't take it, right? Is this something that you don't know, but it would be easy for you to review and you know you could review it on your own? Don't take it. Are you already good at cars? Probably don't need it. But if any of those things are not true, like your cars is less than a 123, you don't remember a lot of the foundational topics, and you feel like you need some structure to learn it, that's what the foundation series is for. So it's not whether or not you're a retaker, it's more like, do you need support on having that foundational knowledge before the course begins? And of course, financial considerations as well. Not necessarily. No. Good question, Jacob. It's based on your timeline. So no, we're not going to do all of it in 6 weeks. That would be way too hard. I have a course that I run for a master's program that has to do that. It is exhausting. I would not make you do that unless you have to. The idea is that you're doing a chunk of UWorld before the course begins to kind of get yourself going. So again, remember that like take 3,000 questions, divide by how many weeks you have for your exam. So if you're planning on taking your MCAT in March, we would love a couple hundred questions in each topic area to be done. So we give those recommendations once you enroll. And then what we do is we kind of take a look at how much you've completed. You and your coach meet and you take a look at how much you've completed, what your test date is, and what you have available in terms of time. And then you and your coach map out your extra questions beyond the required work that you're doing. Some students, especially those who are taking their exam in May or have longer timelines, will just get started with the UWorld and AAMC. Other students who are taking their exam in February, we want to be like wrapping up most of their AAMC. And again, I'm not looking for completion. I don't necessarily need you to complete all of UWorld and all of AAMC. I want around 3,000 questions between the two of them on your challenge areas. All right. If you are already doing amazing in Psych Soc, I do not care whether or not you complete the Psych Soc. But if you are struggling with physics, you better believe we're doing all the physics questions we have, right? So it's not about completion, it's about doing the stuff that's holding your score back and doing that more frequently. So 3,000 questions total is what we look for. And then you and your coach decide which topics you need to work on based on your challenge areas. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, at this point, we don't have a course for cars. Part of that's because cars only, like I said, is really individual. Again, a lot of the stuff in the course, we do cover a lot of cars work, and I have a lot of cars bonus materials for you to work on. If you're in the course and you're like, well, I need extra help with cars, and I really resonate with the way one of my coaches is teaching it, I definitely recommend one-on-one if that's what would help you. And if you're in the course, you get a little discount for one-on-one. But I do want to also let you know that in the foundation series, we do cars every Wednesday for 6 weeks. So if you think cars is something that you need, again, the foundation series does include pretty aggressive cars work because we wanted to make sure that that's something that students had extra access to. But we don't have a cars only course at this time because I tried to do that and we can't standardize it because everybody's so different. Yeah, the foundations course is not the only option. So this winter course is the main option, right, which includes everything. And then the foundation series is what we have before this course. So the winter course is the full program, 3 hours twice a week. It's what's on our website. And then the foundation series is a new product that we have built as of this fall. That is 18 sessions over 6 weeks prior to the start of the full MCAT course with me. So this is where my amazing coaches who also support you throughout the full MCAT course will be kind of introducing you to all the foundational topics, make sure that we have a content foundation and a cars foundation that you need for the course if that's something that you need help with, right? But the course itself, the full course, again, covers everything. We cover all the topics. So again, if you're curious about like the exact schedule, it's on the website, bremmethod.com, and it goes through kind of like what we learn in each class. But yeah, we cover the whole thing. And it's appropriate for both first-time test takers and retakers. We have a slight, we usually have a few more retakers than first time. I think a lot of students try to study on their own their first time, but it's appropriate for both. We work really well with both types of students, and we help you build out your plan regardless. Great questions. Yeah, for retakers that took all of the, thanks for staying late, guys, by the way, because these are great questions. What do you recommend for retakers? I'm okay with you retaking. In fact, you can take other exams, but for our purposes, if you're taking my course, we still want you to take an AAMC at the beginning and an AAMC at the end because it's the only data we know well enough to be able to give you accurate predictions on where you're at in your prep. All the other test prep companies, there's no correlation. And so I can't like, oh, you got this score on Blueprint, so you're definitely ready. Like I have a tough time saying that without lots and lots of Blueprint exams, right? So if you feel uncomfortable retaking exams, I would still take 2 AAMC plus the new one, of course. So 3 of them. The new one you haven't taken, hopefully, because it was just released. And that's brand new, so that'll be great. It's a really good one. And then you can always take other exams. Blueprint's great. Altius is great if you want to pay for them. Jack Weston's okay, and they are free. So those are good additional exams. But again, I like using AAMC for my decision-making scores because it's just the thing we have the most accuracy on. So I don't mind if students retake AAMC exams, especially if it's been more than 3 months since you've taken them before. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Kind of like go from like the one you took the longest to go forward. Yeah. Yeah, there's one more AAMC. Yeah, which is really, really exciting. It's AAMC 6. So now there's 7 AAMC exams, which is plenty. It's a great exam. I really like it. I think it feels representative based on what my students have been saying about the 2025 exams. So definitely save it towards the end of your prep since it's going to be nice and representative. Yeah. Yeah, I will say Princeton Review, again, I don't want to bash anybody else's stuff, right? That's not nice. But I dislike them the most because I feel like they're the least correlated. They're very content heavy, and they don't seem to line up in any reasonable way with the AAMC scores, except for like the rare student. So it's just tough. It's tough to kind of know where you're at with those Princeton review exams. So yeah, Blueprint's better slightly, and Altius is getting better. They've been working really hard to get better. They're expensive though. The deadline for the foundations course, there is no deadline. It starts on the 19th of November though. So if you want to attend live every session, I would sign up by the 19th of November, but we do record them all. So we'll have students, if you want to sign up later and then watch the recordings for the ones you missed, you're welcome to do that. But we start on the 19th of November. It's like our orientation. And I do like a study skills workshop. It's very fun. Yeah, I would start with Jack Weston. Honestly, if you don't want to waste your money, Jack Weston is free. If you don't like it and you're feeling like these feel a little weird compared to my AAMC, especially if you're a retaker, you kind of know the game at this point. I have some students that really, there's some typos, and I have some students that are really type A and hate the fact that there are typos, but I don't find them bad, and they are free. So if you don't want to spend your money yet, I would use that, the free Blueprint, and then the AAMCs. Yeah. Better is a loaded term. I think Jack Weston slightly. If I had to pick, I would say Jack Weston. I think UWorld is a little simplistic on their cars. I don't think it's bad, especially early on to do it. It just doesn't line up so well with the AAMC, but Jack Weston largely is better, but then there are some passages where I'm like, what is going on here? So AAMC is best. UWorld's good early. I have students usually go through the UWorld cars early to develop basic skills and then have them transition to Jack Weston and AAMC. Typically. Yeah, great question. Yes, so if you, you should have a tracker. If you didn't receive it, maybe because we switched you to winter, if I recall correctly, but you should have been given a tracker and it should have been shared with you. That tracker is where you put all of your practice exam data, your most recent practice exam data. So that's where we're going to kind of start on that. And again, feel free to reach out if there's any specific issues with accessing stuff for the course if you're already enrolled, because I'm happy to answer. Yeah, good questions. Does the percentage matter? Not initially. In fact, it's just data. What we use, just if you're curious how we do things in the course, every week students get a progress report on everything they've done in UWorld and AAMC and the course. And what we look at is if you're below 50% average in any subject area. So like Gen Chem or Biochem, we consider that a challenge area, which just means you have to work more on it, which means you should be doing more practice questions on any area that you're less than 50%. If you're between 50 and 70%, now starting to do larger sets, mixing in with other areas that are 50 and 70%, starting to do just more targeted content review on key areas, maybe timed sets to try to get better at it. And we call that a competency area. And you're doing a little less of that, like once a week. And then anything 70% or better on UWorld, we call a mastery area. UWorld's a little depreciated compared to AAMC. So 70% on UWorld's like 80% on AAMC. So if you're getting 70% or greater consistently, right, not just one practice set, but consistently with tutor mode off, right, and a consistent set where you did good quality work and you didn't look things up, that's a mastery area. And you don't need to work hard on that, right? So like, don't do more on that if you're already doing good. Right, so that's kind of how we do it. What we look for is we actually want students to be scoring in the 50 to 70% range, 40 to 70% range, because we want you working on your challenge areas. I get very concerned if I have a student and the first week of the course, they're up in the 80s, because that tells me they're only doing things that they're already good at. I want to see you struggle, because that's how you're going to learn. So your score should increase over time, but you should be prioritizing doing more practice on the areas that are the lowest scoring. Cool. So you're not looking for a particular score. You're looking to learn, right? The only scores we care about are the real test and the practice exams, the 2 to 3 weeks leading up to it. Yeah, good question. Yep. Yeah, you should be able to use the same tracker because we just switch it over. Yeah. No, unfortunately, the reason why, this is can you use your practice exam from September? I need the breakdown. I need the foundation concept scores, and I need to know which AAMC exam it was because I know those tests and I know what that score tells me about you. So unfortunately, I do need a recent AAMC exam. usually either the free unscored or the other free, which is AAMC 1 now. I need that because we're going to break down the foundation concepts, not just the overall scores and section scores, but we want to see like 1A, 1B, how did you perform? So yes, we do need you to take a practice exam sometime before the course starts. Yeah, because we need to know that specific data so we can help you plan. Yes, please. Don't use tutor mode. It causes plateaus. It does. It does. Don't do it. All right, we see it in the data. If a student has used tutor mode, they're more likely to plateau or even decrease their practice exam scores. Not what we want, right? Bad training. It's training the wrong things. Oh yeah, I got this question earlier about Khan Academy MCAT passages. I think they're largely okay. There's some challenging science topics for sure that are like, oh yeah, I got to work on those. They're again a little more content oriented than the more recent AAMC materials, which is always like, do you need practice content? Do you need to practice the strategy and like the critical reasoning? Up to you. The other issue I have with the Khan Academy is there's just not enough of them, right? Which is why I usually supplement with AAMC and UWorld. If you have UWorld and AAMC, I don't think you need the Khan Academy ones unless you're working on a specific area. And CARS, right? We're always looking for more CARS passages. They're not bad though. They're just sometimes a little detailed compared to like the AAMC stuff. Oh yeah, great question, Annabelle. I did answer this earlier and like I have a long version of this. So given that we're on time, I think we recorded this. I hope we did. If we recorded this, I'm going to post it because none of this stuff is like proprietary. So I will be posting this, I believe. If not, my very brief answer is review in chunks. Like do not review your questions, but if it's a content issue, right, then move it to your content review and then do your content review on that subject based on, okay, I have all this stuff that I need to learn. Try not to review like ping-pongy, different subject. Try to kind of be organized about like, I'm spending an hour on this, then I'm going to move on and spend an hour on this. Put timers on so you don't spend too long studying any one subject. I have a lot of stuff on this. I have like a whole hour's worth of workshops and stuff. So I think my next YouTube Live, I am going to include like study skills stuff because I think that's really important, and like how to study and how to build mental models and how to like navigate question review. So feel free to email me and I'm happy to answer if you have specific questions about your review process. Yeah, tutor mode, I was shocked by the data, Jacob. I gotta say, like the tutor mode thing, when we looked at the students who did tutor mode, flatline scores until they stopped. So I don't like using it except for very specific scenarios. I build some sets like math sets where I have it on tutor mode, but it's because we're working on a very specific thing. You can't be that specific on your self-study and on UWorld. So for your purposes in self-study, tutor mode off. All right, and you can do small sets. If you want to see how you're doing, do like a 12 question set. You don't have to do giant sets. So if you want to like do and adjust and do again, that's fine. Do 12, do 14 questions, adjust, do 12 and 14 more questions in the same subject, that's fine. I just don't want you to see the answer after every question. We have scholarships for students who are on FAP. If you qualify for FAP and you have the documentation, you can send that to my colleague, my enrollment manager, Anastasia at, there we go, I'm typing it in, method.com, and just say you're interested in enrolling in the winter cohort, and just tell her which one you're interested in and send her your FAP, and she'll be able to process if you qualify for our scholarships. Yeah, so we do offer those for selected students, again, if you qualify. Yeah. Great question. So you have the coach office hours. So you have two things. You have group review, which are kind of subject-based open review times with a coach. So for example, our first group review in week one of them is in CARS, vocab and author tone work, and another one is in physiology of the cardiovascular system. And so you can go spend as much time as you want, work on your mental models, and that's in a small group setting. It's usually smaller than the full class. People attend if they want. You usually get a chance to do a lot more like Q&A with the coach. And then you'll also have 15-minute one-on-one check-ins with your coach. This isn't tutoring. You're not doing like content. It's to check in to make sure you're doing the work you're supposed to do, adjusting your study plan, checking in with your burnout, and making sure that you know what to target during the week. So that's to kind of help us get a gauge on where you're at. So you'll do those one-on-one check-ins each week for 15 minutes. Again, just to make sure that you're getting the value out of the course, you're doing the work. And then for content-based stuff, you either go to the group review session that is on that content, or you post, we have a Slack channel. And a lot of students, what we'll do is you'll just post questions. Hey, I'm confused about this. Hey, I don't understand why this answer is C in UWorld. And so we'll constantly have that running in Slack, and you'll be able to post those questions, and the coaches and I will answer. So lots of ways to get your questions answered on all of that. Still, sometimes students do want additional one-on-one coaching, like after the course often, and we do have that available as well. Jacob, I usually recommend timed work at about the halfway point in your prep. So if you are prepping for 6 months, start doing timed work 3 months in. I usually recommend doing bigger sets timed and then smaller sets untimed to continue to work on your skills, and then doing more timed work as you progress through closer and closer to test day. Because again, we want to start with accuracy first, then build in timing. No point in doing timed work if you're just going to get questions wrong because you ran out of time when you're like still learning and trying to assess your challenge areas. So I like to always visualize, like, we want to make sure the wheels are on, everything is solid before we make the car go fast. Yes, yeah. So one-on-one is like essentially tutoring, and then the course is available. Most students find that there's enough stuff going on in the course, enough resources that they don't need one-on-one until after the course or before the course, just for reference. Yes, it is. So if you do have a discount through your institution, that is a set fee. If you are interested in the fee assistance program and you have access to that, please message us, because we'll be able to look at your specific situation. And also based on your university, there may be some financial support as well with our affiliate relationships. So definitely reach out to us if you are an affiliate or you have a question about the fee assistance program, because we'll be able to help you with your specific situation. Yeah. Great questions, guys. All right. Anything else before we wrap up? Thanks for staying an extra half hour with me. It's never happened before, so I miss you guys. It's been good to be back in it. Again, one last thing about the course, the fall cohort did fill up a full month in advance. So if you are interested in the winter cohort, I would say err on the side of caution. It's also a discounted price, right? It's a little cheaper to sign up now than later. It's currently under early enrollment because we really want students to get in there so we know who you are, start working on the resources. You get access to UWorld within a week. You get access to all of our content resources immediately. I have some content guides and worksheets and stuff for you to work on. I have some bonus modules, so you get access to that all right away. We want to encourage you to start your studying earlier rather than later, so we are under early enrollment for the next few weeks. And again, that YouTube 150 discount for those that are not on affiliate programs with their institution or are not on FAP, the YouTube 150 will give you an extra $150 off. And again, we do purchase UWorld on your behalf, so please do not purchase it. If you already have access, usually can reach out to them and ask to get it refunded. All right, if you are part of our program, you'll say, hey, I'm part of the Brem method. They're purchasing UWorld on my behalf. Can I get my subscription refunded? Yeah, thank you guys so much. Yeah, I hope it will be posted. If it does, I'll post it right away. I've never recorded one of these before, so I'm hoping it worked. But if it didn't, just continue to post questions. Like in my registration video, I've been trying to answer those as fast as I can because I know that there's some urgency there. Feel free to email me if you have any specific questions, but I hope I recorded this. I'm newish to the YouTube Live thing, so I hope I did it right. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, if there's any other questions, I'll hang out for a little bit, but, oh, it is recorded. Okay, I have my admin there helping me out. Okay, so it is recorded. It'll get posted as soon as it does its compressing thing or whatever it needs to do on the back end. So it should be available. We'll make sure it's up in public. Thanks. It's going to be in November, probably the second week of November, I want to say, right around election time. We'll post about it. I am going to be at a symposium at Grinnell College in Iowa. If anyone is local to the Iowa area, I'll be there the first week of November, and then I'll be back here. So second week of November, I think will be our next YouTube Live. Yeah, and we'll post about it and send out reminders. So just make sure you're subscribed and also on our email list, and we'll make sure you're there. Yeah, thank you guys so much. I'm so glad. I'm so glad they're helpful. Yeah, let me know if you're having any, like, I really want to join the course, but there's some moving pieces. Just let us know. We're trying to work with you. We want to support you guys, okay? So I'm glad you're finding this useful. Let me know if you need anything. Otherwise, have a great rest of your night. I won't keep you too much later. Good luck, everyone. Good luck on registration tomorrow. Let me know if there's any issues. I'll be monitoring. All right, I'll be monitoring the comments. I'll be there on my registration video that I posted last week. So if you need anything, you let me know. Thank you, guys. Thanks.